Howdy, Space Rangers, Captain Phoenix here. Now, over a year ago, I made a video talking about how only Lloyd wasn't necessary in the grand scheme of Ninjago Crystalized. And even though I dislike how only Lloyd was handled, I made it a point to mention that the thematic writing and meaning behind it was still true to the core of Ninjago. After making that video, I moved on with my life. I thought I and the fan base were done talking about Crystalized. But it turns out I was wrong. Almost 3 years later, and the fanbase is still whining about it like it killed their grandma. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with hating Crystalized, and this video isn't even here to defend it. Just one aspect that's really been on my mind. And this aspect annoys me, cause I wouldn't have made this video if it weren't for the rapid spread of misinformation in the fanbase. To this date, people are still making up reasons to be mad at Crystalized, and I figured I'd make this video to set the record straight and say my piece. Of course, I don't want to point any fingers, but I do have some suspicions as to where this excessive vitriolic hate for the season that affected so many may come from. Anyway, the topic of today's discussion is none other than, of course, Lloyd's characterization in Crystalized. More specifically, his conflict with his own self. In this video, I'm going to address every major complaint fans have with his character, point by point, and hopefully bring some honest discussion back into the fray. This isn't to defend Crystalized, but to ask of you guys to judge it fairly. Without further ado, let's begin. Let's start off with the blue whale in the room. This scene and line.
Having what now?
It means caring. Of course you don't know what it means. You're incapable of compassion. That's ridiculous. You can't learn how to care. You either care or you don't.
No, you can't learn.
You're an Oni. The Oni are incapable of caring. All they do is destroy. So is it any wonder I don't want to embrace my Oni side?
All media literacy seems to be thrown out the window when discussions of this scene arise. I've seen many Ninjago fans complain about small potatoes like, how dare they make Lloyd racist to Onis? Did he forget Mistake is a full-blooded Oni who helped him? So, let's talk about Mistake, shall we? As mentioned, Mistake is a full-blooded Oni who was compassionate to Lloyd at his lowest point. So that means Crystalized had an inconsistency and that Lloyd was wrong, right? Well, listen to what Mistake had to say about Oni in Ninjago Season 8.
Mr. Created Ninjago, he fathered 2 sons of his own. He thought he could escape the war. He saw the evil of the Oni was waiting to be unleashed in one of his sons, Lloyd Garmadon. It was up to Master Wu to control his brother's undying thirst to destroy. And with some help,
And if you're not convinced, let's just throw in some of these clips from Season 9 Hunted as well, just to spice things up, shall we?
You're an Oni.
But we were told Oni are dangerous. All they want to do is destroy.
we are. You don't want me on your bad side. Never trust an Oni.
Gotcha.
From her own mouth, she said that Oni power is evil and uncontrollable. If she, a full-blooded Oni, could say that, who are we to disprove her? She straight up says Oni are not to be trusted as well. It is in their nature to destroy. Mistake was only able to quell her instincts because, and I quote,
Since your grandfather was born of both worlds, our mission was to follow him into this realm and turn him to our side, or destroy him. But he wouldn't turn. And I fell in love with this world he created. My fellow Oni wanted to complete our mission, but I turned on them, and I have helped the first Spinjitzu master ever since.
She says, or at the very least heavily implies with her own mouth, that she has the capability and need to destroy. That's how ingrained it is to her. So, while Mistake is a commendable example, it is important to remember that she's but only one piece of the puzzle, and an exceptional one at that. Every other Oni we've seen is an uncontrollable force of destruction. The Oni we see in Season 10 rampage across the realms, seeking nothing but to destroy. Garmadon, when he's resurrected, without the Devourer's venom in his system mind you, seeks only to destroy everything and achieves his true potential through violence. It's only after he learns the meaning of life from Vinny that he begins to value it. And even then, he's so detached from his humanity that he can't even bring himself to love his wife and son. He barely sticks around to make sure Lloyd is alive and okay after the tornado of creation in the Season 10 finale, and goes on to value a literal houseplant over him later on in the timeline. Ninjago makes it perfectly clear that Oni primarily have the instinct of destruction, and while it's not impossible to redeem them, it does take time. So yes, while Lloyd is not fully correct in that statement, he's also not fully wrong. Oni are mostly incapable of caring and are not trustworthy. They mainly seek destruction, and while they can change, the show hasn't provided enough time to help them change. Ninjago was facing a full-blown do-or-die invasion in Season 10, and the ninja were on crunch time, and in Crystalized, the Overlord had already taken over the city, putting the ninja on crunch time again. Even if we remove all the factual elements that prove people are dumb when critiquing this scene, looking at the context of the scene itself, Lloyd is not in the right headspace when he says this. He's clearly angry and stressed to the max. He's not thinking straight and is shouting all the bottled up feelings and thoughts he kept inside. This is quite literally the definition of heat of the moment. Now, if we bring back all the factual context of the scene and his lived experiences up to that point, doesn't it make sense that Lloyd would harbor some understandable racist feelings towards the Oni? It's not like he even remains with this mindset. He admits he's wrong when he cools down later on in the episode. Maybe it's just me, but if you unironically say that this scene ruins Lloyd's character or adds to a list of how he was ruined and crystallized, then you are choosing to ignore the context and seasons of build-up that led to that line. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, I'm mostly referring to the fans who wanted more of Oni Lloyd in the season. Again, I made a whole video about Oni Lloyd last year, so instead of repeating all my points, please go watch that video and come back and continue the conversation. There'll be an info card and link in the description of this video if you're interested in checking it out. However, for the sake of the current topic, I'll repeat the most important bits. Basically, a large group of Ninjago fans were upset that Oni Lloyd's form was built up for a good chunk of the season, but when it was finally introduced, it was barely used. As I said in my video, I didn't think Lloyd's Oni form was that important to defeating the Overlord, and I explained why. One of my main points was that Lloyd using a power that's canonically said to be evil to defeat the embodiment of evil would actually tip the balance in favor of evil and either do no lasting damage to the Overlord or allow him to return quicker. Most fans didn't see it that way though. A lot of them either wanted Oni Lloyd to defeat the Overlord purely in his Oni form or with the dragon's help while still an Oni. You will not believe how many people have seen call Lloyd a wuss simply because he didn't like what he saw in his reflection. And don't get me wrong, while these headcanons are cool, especially the Oni form Lloyd and the dragon teaming up, at the end of the day, they are just that, headcanons. While cool on paper, they missed the point and lesson of what Crystalized was trying to say, and weren't even a consideration during the writing process. There were drafts and alternate endings released by the creators and writers of the Overlord, being the first Ninjitsu Master's Oni side, or of Lloyd becoming evil and taking over Ninjago after destroying the Overlord. Almost as if embracing his uncontrollable Oni power would have been his version of a great devourer bite. The writers clearly had a different idea for Lloyd than the fans, and from those drafts, it's also clear that Oni power was meant to be an evil, corrupting force for Lloyd, which lines up with what we've seen and heard in previous canon. Basically, using Oni form is not in Lloyd's character, and he hates having to use it, even as a last resort. It draws on anger and violence, things Lloyd is not known for being. If you lot to remove your blindly hate crystallized glasses for 5 seconds, you would see that that's the point! Him not using his Oni form is more in character than him using it. All of this to say that Lloyd wasn't meant to embrace himself by embracing his Oni side. He's embracing himself by holding on to his strong and good will, and still choosing the right path when all the chips are down instead of the quick and easy one. He straight up said it himself, there is always another way, which was in one of the episodes I referenced earlier on in this video, so again, go watch it if you don't think I'm telling the truth. But regardless, that's a theme of a good chunk of the season, and it ties back to the roots of Lloyd's character. Ever since Lloyd was a kid, he always wanted to be like his father, and in the Wild Brain era, it was his greatest fear. Him rejecting his Oni side is the final nail in the coffin, basically confirming to himself that he will never fall like Garmadon, and that he will always rise up above his shadows. The end of Crystalized isn't him rejecting a part of himself, it's him accepting and keeping all parts of himself in check, even the parts he doesn't like, because that's what separates him from his father. I swear, it'll never cease to amaze me how Ninjago fans will demonize a season for spreading the message that you should forgive your abuser, yet turn around and get mad at the protagonist from the same season for not giving in to his darkest impulses. I swear, we're wild like that. I'll try not to focus too much on this point, but it's also important. A lot of people say that Lloyd was too mean in this season, from his cold shouldering of Garmadon and wailing on innocent civilians, but in the same breath turning around and being compassionate to Harumi, which, yeah, I can get how that's confusing, so let me unconfuse it for you. First of all, let's put the civilian argument to bed. The crystallized zombies were in their way. Running away wasn't a viable option. The energy blasts did little damage and the Oni blasts were overkill. Tell me, what exactly is wrong with punching and kicking a mind-controlled civilian who won't remember what happened when he wakes up? Hell, as much as Lloyd is enjoying it, you might as well call me Better Call Saul, cause I could make the argument for self-defense right here. Second, y'all are being way too forgiving to Garmadon. Yes, I do think Lloyd was a tad bit too mean to him and nice to Harumi, but much like my first point, it's not unjustified. The last time Lloyd had seen Harumi, she had committed a noble act, then died. True, he didn't see the noble act, but that's what the theme of the season was going for. Since then, Lloyd had to learn to trust again and help people become their best selves. All throughout the Wildbrain era, with the exception of Vanya for obvious reasons, we follow Lloyd see the best in people and slowly learn to accept and forgive his time with Harumi. So it makes sense that when she came back, Lloyd would naturally want to help her complete her road to redemption. But of course, Harumi showed that she was unwilling to change in Primeval's eye, and this understandably made Lloyd close up once again once he faces the next person who gave him trauma, i.e. Garmadon. You see guys, this is what cause and effect looks like. Now, in the name of fairness, all of that doesn't excuse the BS we see at the end of the season.
We'll discuss later. Yeah,
It's okay. She's with us.
It's true. She helped.
I fully agree that these do put a dent in Lloyd's character, but not enough to say that it was ruined. Now, let's backtrack to Garmadon. The last time Lloyd had seen him, he was very reluctant to help the ninja, and when all was said and done, he left without so much as a goodbye. And this is not even mentioning the fact that Lloyd basically died, and Garmadon seemed like he couldn't care less about that whole debacle. When they met again, Lloyd rightfully thought that he was still evil and had to spend the remainder of the season being proven wrong. Mind you, he didn't witness Garmadon's off-screen development. So, and I say off-screen because technically to Lloyd he didn't see it, even though us, the audience, saw it, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not even going to be pedantic about that. Anyway, point is, Lloyd didn't witness Garmadon's development, so there's also that to take into account. Lloyd also knew from Mistake that Oni take a long time to turn good, and after just coming from another traumatic experience with Harumi, it makes sense that Lloyd would feel like he didn't have the time or emotional bandwidth to give to rehabilitate Garmadon. And all of this is not even mentioning how the last time Lloyd tried to give Garmadon some familiar love, he ended up receiving the two-piece no biscuit instead. Plus, Garmadon faked his death in the finale to emotionally manipulate Lloyd into using his Oni form, so I guess fair is fair. So in conclusion, no, I wouldn't say Crystalized ruined Lloyd's character. Yeah, there were some inconsistencies, but then again, nearly every character in the Wildbrain era suffered from this, so singling Lloyd out feels cheap to me. And to top that off, as shown in this video, some of these inconsistencies aren't even that big, like Lloyd smiling at Harumi. Like, it's not that deep, guys. We're making mountains out of molehills here. And after all the arguments I've brought up, I am firmly of the belief that Lloyd was more in character in Crystalized than all of the fan fictions and headcanons that people had of him put together. Lloyd still remained the pure-hearted hero who tries to help everyone, sees the best in others, makes mistakes, learns from them, makes them again, and understands what it truly means to be a hero, a ninja. And of course, to repeat what I said at the start of the video, this isn't a defense of Crystalized as a whole. Even though I personally like Crystalized, I fully understand why most don't, and there are a lot of things to pick apart from it. The point of this video is to let you know that Lloyd isn't one of those issues, and that if you're gonna critique Crystalized, you better do it fairly. My personal main issue with the season was Harumi. Her reintroduction to the series was handled so poorly that it straight up tricked people into thinking Lloyd was a problem. Dunking on Harumi would be its own video entirely, but luckily I don't need to make that, as there are hundreds of other videos out there that have already done a good job doing so, including from #1 Crystalized haters, Crusty738. Anyways guys, that's gonna be all from me today. Tell me, what do you guys think? Am I onto something here? Did we misunderstand Crystalized? Or were it and I just full of crap and we said nothing meaningful? Feel free to leave your comments down below, and as always, let's have a discussion. Anyways, with that, thank you guys so very much for watching. Be sure to like if you like, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification button to be part of the team, leave a comment down below, slap a cow, and with that, I will see you in another universe. Goodbye, my Rangers.